I remember driving down that narrow country road, the fog curling around the trees like silent fingers. The air was thick, damp, and almost alive, pressing softly against the windshield. The headlights flickered once, twice, as if blinking in warning, and I could hear the faint rustle of something moving just beyond the tree line. Silence stretched in all directions, broken only by the occasional hum of the engine and the rhythmic tapping of rain against the roof. Somewhere ahead, a pale light appeared, swaying, but there were no houses for miles. I slowed, my breath fogging the glass, and noticed shadows moving in ways shadows shouldn't. That's when I saw it. The fog lay heavy over the road, thick and slow, curling around the tires as I drove. Trees leaned too close, their branches scratching against each other like restless fingers. I could feel the chill clinging to my skin, soft but insistent, damp through my jacket. The turnoff appeared suddenly, though it shouldn't have. A bend swallowed in white, deeper than the night around it. I slowed, more out of habit than fear. The fog pressed in, muffling the hum of the engine, swallowing the world beyond a few feet. A faint light shimmered ahead. Not a street lamp, not a car, just something pale, hovering in the mist. I squinted, but it drifted away when I tried to focus. The trees trembled with wind or something else. I couldn't tell which. The road stretched on, longer than it should have been. Every shadow seemed to twist, stretch. They moved, but there was no breeze, no life. I felt my hands tighten on the wheel. My own breath sounded too loud, echoing in the still air. Then I thought I heard footsteps, soft, brushing against the wet leaves, closer than they should be. I stopped the car, heart tapping like a slow drum. Silence fell, heavy and complete. A shape shifted in the fog, no more than a shadow at first, swaying between the trees. It wasn't human, not entirely. It lingered at the edge of vision, always retreating when I looked directly. A rustle behind me made me jerk. Nothing, only the mist twisting around the asphalt. I tried to tell myself it was just the fog, the trees, the night playing tricks. But then the light appeared again, closer this time, and I could feel it watching, not bright, not warm, just there, pressing on my skin like a breath that wasn't mine. The branches scraped against the hood. Or was it my imagination? I caught movement in the corner of my eye, a tree leaning too far, shadows pooling beneath it. I blinked. Gone. The road seemed wrong. Not the curves, not the asphalt. It felt longer, stretched thin, like the fog was pulling it taut. I drove slower, eyes flicking between a faint glow ahead and the darkness that pressed from every side. The hum of the engine was swallowed, leaving me with my own pulse thudding in the quiet. I thought about turning back, but the bend behind me had disappeared. Fog swallowed it completely. I wasn't sure if I'd even seen it. The light ahead flickered again, pale and teasing, moving just out of reach. A whisper of movement ran along the side of the road, leaves shifting, gravel skittering. I imagined footsteps, light and quick, circling the car. The fog carried them away before I could be certain. I exhaled slowly, trying to calm the tight coil in my chest. Then came the shadow. It emerged fully for a heartbeat, a shape tall and thin, too dark against the white mist. I blinked. It dissolved into nothing, leaving only the hum of fog and the faint light ahead. The road bent sharply again, and the light vanished. No sign it had ever been there. I was alone, just the fog, the trembling trees, and the long, empty turnoff stretching before me. The air smelled damp, earthy, carrying something faint metallic. I reached for the window, fingertips brushing cold glass. Everything outside seemed to pause. Even the wind had stopped. I drove on, slowly, carefully, eyes searching the mist for shadows, light, anything that might be real. But the turnoff swallowed me entirely, leaving only fog and the quiet hum beneath my tires. And for a long while, I couldn't tell if I was moving forward or if the road itself was moving under me. The air was heavy with damp. Even the weeds seemed to lean toward the ground. Exhausted, I stepped through the overgrowth, each footfall soft, almost swallowed. The farmhouse appeared in fragments. Boards sagged. Windows stared like empty eyes. A faint glimmer flickered somewhere behind them. I thought it might be a reflection at first, but then it moved. The porch was a frozen sigh of wood. A rocking chair slid back and forth. Slow, deliberate. No wind stirred. Not a whisper along the cracked boards. The motion seemed patient. Watching. I leaned closer. The scent of damp wood and old hay pressed against my face. It carried something else, something sweet and sour, rotting quietly beneath the surface. I imagined the walls remembering the weight of years, of silence, of footsteps that had long since vanished. Inside, darkness pooled like thick water. I could see the faint outlines of furniture, leaning into shadows. Every corner held the hush of waiting. I swallowed. Even my breath sounded too loud. I stepped on a loose board. It groaned beneath me, and then it stopped. The hum of the house returned. Subtle, almost like a pulse. I realized the rocking chair's sway had slowed. I wasn't sure if I had paused it, or if it had paused for me. The smell of old hay grew stronger, closer, curling around my ankles. I imagined fingers brushing against my skin. Soft, dry, patient. The air tasted faintly metallic, and I pressed my lips together. It was a taste of anticipation, of something waiting, quiet and knowing. Through the window, a shadow moved just beyond the pane. It wasn't human, not entirely. It bent with the lines of the house, curling around the corners, small and patient. I blinked. It disappeared. I found the door. It hung open like a sigh, creaking against the hinges with the weight of years. I stepped inside. The floor was littered with straw, dust, and silence. Every step made it stir, but nothing answered. Nothing breathed. The rocking chair creaked again. I could feel it through the floorboards, through the soles of my shoes. I didn't dare look. I just waited. The house seemed to exhale slowly, deliberately, as if inviting me to notice every whisper of its skin. I brushed my fingers along the wall. The wood was rough, yet strangely warm. I imagined the house remembering hands like mine, holding, searching, hesitating. A shadow flickered in the corner of my vision. Gone when I turned. The smell of hay and damp wood grew heavier, almost sweet, almost choking. I felt it in my nose, in my lungs, in the slow rhythm of my heartbeat. I realized the rocking chair had stopped again. I exhaled softly, and the silence seemed to hum in response. I didn't stay long. I left the house as quietly as I could. The weeds closed behind me, brushing against my legs like soft whispers. From the porch, the rocking chair shifted one last time. Slow, patient, waiting. I walked away, but the smell lingered. The dark windows followed. Even now, I can see the shadow curling behind the glass. And sometimes in my dreams, the chair moves on its own. The gate groaned before I reached it. Rusted iron, streaked with dark red and green, swinging just enough to show it had moved. A breath of wind, or maybe not, made it shift again. The road beyond disappeared quickly into shadow. Fog curled low, wrapping around my ankles. Every step I took felt louder than it should, echoing back at me from nowhere. I paused. A rustle behind the gate, or maybe beside it. Something small, fleeting, I thought, but it lingered in the corner of my eye. The metal tasted of old iron. I ran my fingers along the gate. It left a faint residue on my skin. A smell of damp soil and rust filled my nose. I stepped through. The ground seemed softer here, muted by mist. Footsteps followed, not in time with mine, but in pattern. Slow, patient, deliberate. I tried to convince myself it was the wind, but the fog seemed thicker there, darker, as if it was breathing with me. Every shadow twisted slightly, like it wanted attention. A tree leaned over the path. Its branches scraped together. Dry fingers clicking. I could hear them whispering. Almost, not words, just insistence. The gate's groan echoed behind me. It didn't stop swinging. I didn't look back. I walked faster. Each footstep sent a cold pulse through my soles. The fog clung to my clothes, wet and smelling faintly of iron. Something moved off the road. A shape, maybe hunched or low. I couldn't see clearly, only the sense that it existed. It mirrored me, keeping the same distance, just at the edge of vision. I felt the hum of my own heart. Soft, uneasy. The air seemed to tighten around it, compressing, holding me. I stopped. The silence felt wrong, like the fog was holding its breath. Then a faint squeak. The gate, or something else. The road forked, or maybe it curved. I couldn't tell. Fog swallowed everything beyond 10 steps. The wind picked up. It rattled through the old leaves, carrying a scent of metal and decay. I could hear something moving behind me. Soft, careful, patient. I didn't dare look back. Shadows pooled and stretched across the road. Everyone felt like it waited for me to step wrong. My fingers brushed against stone. Cold, wet, uneven. It grounded me. For a moment, the sound of my breath was louder than everything else. The gate groaned again, distant now. It had stopped moving. Or maybe it hadn't. I kept walking. The fog seemed to close in around my shoulders. Each step carried me deeper, but the shape behind never moved closer. I could feel it. A presence, patient, lingering. Not malicious, not loud, but certain. The road ended in darkness. Or maybe the road never ended. I could hear the faintest rustle, just beyond my sight. I stopped. The fog swirled around me. Cold seeped into my bones. The gate was behind me, swinging once more, and then it was silent. The fog had settled low over the field. The grass glistened with dew, each blade trembling. A pale moon hung in the sky, barely more than a ghost. I walked toward the tree. It stood farther than I remembered, taller, wider, impossible. Its trunk yawned, hollow and dark, like a mouth waiting. A thin wind curled through the branches, carrying faint whispers. I could almost make out words, names, perhaps, or memories. They trembled in and out, brushing my ears with a cold touch. I stopped a few feet away. The bark was rough under my fingers, jagged and wet. Inside the hollow, shadows moved, slow, twisting, never still. I told myself it was just branches, moonlight, imagination, but the air inside seemed to hum, soft, low, pulling. A leaf brushed my cheek. It wasn't wind. It was deliberate. I felt it linger, tickling my skin, brushing away the warmth from my neck. A breath followed. Not mine. A memory I couldn't place. The whispers grew sharper, teasing shapes of words I almost recognized. I wanted to run, but I was already rooted. I knelt at the edge of the hollow. The inside smelled of damp earth, of rot, of something older. The moonlight reached barely an inch into the cavity, and yet I saw movement. A small shadow flickered at the far end, too fast, too fluid to be a branch. It bent, twisted, and then it was gone. The wind shifted, carrying voices closer. I could almost swear one spoke my name. Not loud, not a shout, just a whisper pressed against my ear. I froze, my hands pressed to my chest. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Every leaf, every blade of grass seemed to hold its breath with me. I stepped closer. The shadows in the hollow swayed in rhythm with my own heartbeat. I could see faint shapes, limbs maybe, or bark, or something between. The edges of the darkness flickered with pale light, and then the trees seemed to exhale, a rush of cold air, wet and heavy, brushing over my face. It smelled of wet soil, of smoke I couldn't place, of hollow things waiting. I want to call out, to say it was just a tree, just an old tree, but my voice stuck. The ground hummed beneath me, or maybe it was inside my own chest. A small sound, almost like soft footsteps, echoed in the hollow, not on the ground, not outside, inside. I pressed my ear to the trunk. The whispers were louder now, words I almost recognized, pulled from somewhere I should not have remembered. The edges of the hollow seemed to pulse with them, slow, deliberate. Something shifted. Something leaned into the moonlight. I blinked. It was gone. Or maybe I wasn't blinking fast enough. I pulled back. The tree seemed aware. Every branch a finger, every shadow a gaze. I could feel it watching, patient, silent, waiting. The whispers faded, but their absence left a ringing inside my ears, a quiet ache. I stepped away slowly. The fog wrapped around me, soft and damp. The tree stayed, hollow and endless, holding its breath. I kept my eyes on it until it became only a silhouette. The voices lingered, faint as smoke, drifting on the wind, and in the emptiness between them, I could still feel the pull, the slow insistence of something that was not there, and yet never gone. I turned, walking back toward the faint glow of the road. The grass whispered beneath my shoes. Every shadow flickered one last time, and I realized, even at a distance, I could still hear it. The hollow tree breathing behind me. The fog clung low over the river. Wooden planks shivered beneath each step. I could feel them settle, almost sighing under my weight. The air smelled damp, like moss and wet earth. A faint wind whispered across the water, carrying a chill that seeped into my sleeves. I paused, listening. Nothing. Then movement. A pale shape flickered in the reflection beneath me. It drifted against the current, pale and silent, and vanished before I could blink. I swallowed, the taste of iron sharp in my mouth. Footsteps followed me, soft, uneven, behind. No one was there. The bridge groaned, a slow, hollow sound, like it had secrets it wasn't willing to share. I stepped faster, but the footsteps kept pace, never nearer, never gone. The fog thickened, curling like smoke around the railings. Water lapped against the supports, whispering with each tiny wave. I thought I heard a low hum, almost a sigh, rising from the river itself. A shadow shifted, not behind me, not in front. It moved along the edges, lingering just out of focus, pale and wet. I couldn't look directly, couldn't let my eyes rest. I pressed my hands to the rail, cold and slick. My breath rose in mist. It smelled of damp wood, of decay, of things I couldn't name. The footsteps slowed, then stopped. Silence, thick and wet, filled the space around me. A ripple passed through the reflection. I caught glimpses of a face, pale and small, fading with the water's movement. Gone, but not gone. I wanted to run, but the bridge seemed endless. Every plank beneath my feet stretched longer, wider, as if testing my patience. The fog pressed closer, damp fingers brushing my neck. A soft, wet rustle came from the rail beside me. I froze. A shadow lingered there, pale and pulsing, like a heartbeat underwater. I took a step back. The reflection shivered again. And then nothing. Just fog, just the hum of the river. I didn't turn around. I didn't breathe too loudly. I kept walking, letting the bridge guide me, letting the pale light lead me, even if it wasn't really mine. The other side emerged, vague and trembling in the fog. No footsteps followed. No shape remained. Only the bridge, quiet now, settling under me, waiting. I didn't look back. The water whispered secrets I wasn't meant to hear. The fog clung to my clothes as I left it behind. But sometimes, at night, I swear I can still hear it. A soft footstep behind me. Gone. The barn rises against the pale light of late afternoon. Its doors hang open like a yawning mouth, and I feel the weight of the hollow space before I even step inside. Dust drifts along the floor, lifting and falling as if it breathes. I inhale, and the dry, earthy smell scratches the back of my throat. Somewhere above, a soft clatter, then silence. Echoes from the loft. No wind stirs. I move closer. Each step presses the wood beneath me. It's grown soft but sharp in the still air. Shadows stretch along the walls, long fingers bending around posts, as though they are leaning in to watch. A board shifts underfoot. I startle, but it is only the wood settling. Or maybe not. I cannot tell anymore. The loft looms above, dark and quiet. I hear scraping, a gentle drag, like nails across wood, then a pause. My skin prickles, every hair standing. I want to call out, but my voice catches small and thin. Light slips through cracks in the walls, pale slivers that tremble like breathing. I notice dust motes dancing differently here, swirling as if the air itself remembers someone else's movements. A rhythm I cannot follow. I climb the ladder, slow, careful, each rung creaking beneath my weight. The clatter resonates above me, faint and hesitant, but I see nothing through the shadows. Only a faint shape, shifting at the edge of vision, then gone when I blink. I reach the loft. The boards are slick with dust. A rusted bucket leans in a corner, its rim catching the dying light. I feel it first, before I see it, a presence that presses against my chest, quiet, waiting. The air smells different here. Older, darker, a faint sweetness, Rotting hay mixed with something metallic sticks to my tongue. I breathe carefully, shallow, soft footsteps, or maybe imagined, pad along the loft above me. The sound moves closer, then halts, and I am certain it waits for me to look. I cannot. A shadow stretches toward the ladder. It trembles, then retreats, leaving behind a cold emptiness that presses into my shoulders. I take a step back. The loft seems to stretch taller now, the ceiling farther than it should be. The corners darker than before. I hear a whisper. I do not understand it. It is not words, just a hollow vibration of air, like breath over old boards. The bucket tips slightly. Dust spills over the edge. I do not flinch. I know someone or something is moving just out of sight, and it does not need to show itself to be real. The sun drops lower. Pale light slants through the cracks, long shadows dancing in a slow, lazy rhythm. The barn hums, almost imperceptibly as if alive, watching. I descend the ladder. Each rung groans. Each shadow follows. The soft clatter above fades, replaced by silence. But the air remains heavy, the dust still swirling in lazy eddies. Outside, the doors hang open, yawning. I do not want to leave, and I cannot explain why. The barn is empty, yet I feel inside me the slow pulse of something waiting, and I know it will be there when the night swallows the light. I step onto the ground. The cold earth presses my feet. I glance back once. Shadows shift behind the doorframe. The barn exhales, and I hear the softest echo of footsteps, though I am already far away. The field was wide, endless under the low-hanging fog. Damp earth pressed against my boots with each slow step. Night had settled like a heavy cloth over the land. A faint glow appeared ahead. At first, I thought it was a star fallen into grass, but the light was close. A lantern, swinging gently, though the air was still. No wind. Nothing moved but the pale flame. Shadows gathered around it, tall, twisted shapes that melted into the mist. I blinked and they vanished, then returned just at the corner of my eye. A whisper drifted, soft, indistinct. I couldn't tell if it was from the wind or from the fog itself. It tasted of iron and something sweet I could name. I stepped closer. The lantern's glow outlined the wet grass, each blade trembling. I thought I saw hands reaching through the mist, fingers stretching, curling, then gone. The smell of damp soil filled my lungs. And something else. Burnt wood, smoke without fire. The air pulsed, almost alive, as if the field were breathing around me. I wanted to turn back, but my feet stayed rooted, drawn. The whispers grew, not words I could understand, only feelings. Sadness, longing, a quiet anger. They seeped into my chest. Cold, heavy. The lantern swayed again, a slow, impossible rhythm. The shadows now moved with it. They danced in patterns I almost recognized. Faces formed, pale and shifting. Eyes like hollow moons, staring. I held my breath. A soft hum underlined the silence. It vibrated through the soles of my shoes, through the fog, through the marrow of my bones. I thought I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, careful, almost shy. I turned. Nothing, just the fog curling around itself. The field swallowing everything. The lantern flickered. And then I noticed the shapes were no longer distant. They hovered closer, edges soft, indistinct, but there, breathing, waiting. A gust of air, or was it? Brushed my face. It carried voices now. Closer, urgent, murmuring my name. I wanted to speak. Couldn't. The words stuck to the back of my throat. I reached out, fingers trembling. The lantern's warmth touched my hand. A pulse. Not fire, not electricity. Something else. Something alive. The shapes recoiled and swirled. The whispers fractured. Then silence. Total. The kind that presses against your ears until your own heartbeat sounds like thunder. I stepped back. The lantern swung once more, then settled. The field returned to fog, grass, and shadow. Nothing moved. I walked away, feet dragging through the wet earth. The lantern stayed behind, glowing faintly, swaying gently, and I could still hear it. The whispers, soft, sad, always calling, just beyond the edge of what I could see. I do not know if I ever left the field completely. Some nights, I swear I can still see that pale light, swaying in the distance, waiting for me to come back. The night had a weight. Fog hugged the edges of the road, curling around the trees like smoke. My headlights cut a pale line through it. I saw something then. A figure, still, hooded, shadowed, half dissolving into the mist. I slowed. The hum began, low, almost inside my skull, vibrating behind my teeth. It didn't feel like sound, more like warning. When I blinked, it was gone. The road stretched empty, slick with condensation. I gripped the wheel tighter. Every turn, every ridge in the asphalt pressed against my palms. The fog thickened, swallowing the headlights whole. White walls where black should be. I could barely see the lines dividing the lanes. The hum rose, not from outside, from somewhere inside me. I thought I glimpsed movement in the periphery, saw footsteps. No, the drag of something over the gravel. I checked the mirrors. Empty. I tried to shake it off. Breath shallow, heart stubbornly loud. The air smelled damp. Earth, wet leaves, something metallic. It settled in my nose. Then the figure appeared again, on the shoulder, still, waiting. This time, I didn't blink. I slowed more. Nothing. Just fog. I passed. The hum persisted. I thought I heard whispering. A syllable, stretched thin, just outside understanding. I rubbed my temples. Cold sweat on my neck. The road curved. Something pressed against the passenger window. I froze. Fingertips, pale and wet. Not solid, but heavier than air. Then gone. My pulse drummed in my ears. The fog seemed to move with me. Pushing, curling, folding back over the asphalt behind my car. Headlights swallowed again. I thought I saw headlights in the rear view. Dim, shifting. Not mine. They stayed there for a long time. Just following. The figure came once more. Closer. On the yellow line now. I blinked. Nothing. Silence. Thick. Almost tactile. I could hear my own heartbeat and the static hum inside my skull. Breath caught in my throat. I tried to rationalize. A hitchhiker? A trick of the fog? The mind plays cruel games at this hour. I told myself that, over and over. It didn't make the hum go away. I slowed again, almost to a stop. The figure never moved like a person would. It existed at the edge of the world, and the world refused to hold it. Then, without warning, the fog thinned. The road opened. Trees and asphalt returned to ordinary shapes. The humming receded. I exhaled slowly. Too slowly, maybe. My hand still shook. I glanced in the mirror one last time. Empty. Only the fog rolling like pale waves behind me. But I could feel it. The quiet, the lingering weight of presence. And somewhere in the distance, soft footsteps. Or maybe just my imagination, following me all the way home. The path was barely visible through the overgrowth. Twisting weeds brushed my ankles, damp with dew. The air smelled of wet stone and earth, heavy with decay. Tombstones leaned at odd angles, some half swallowed by moss. I traced a finger over one name, letters blurred and soft under my touch. The chill made my skin crawl, yet I could not look away. A pale light drifted between the graves. It wasn't steady, it shivered like breath. Each time I stepped closer, it trembled, slipping further into shadow. The wind shifted. It carried a sigh, long and hollow, threading between the stones. I stopped. Listen. It was almost human, almost pleading. Soft footsteps pressed into the earth behind me. I spun, but only shadows stretched along the grass. The moon broke through clouds, casting the shapes of the tombstones across themselves. Long arms of darkness reached, but never touched. I found another grave. Its stone was cracked, leaning as if bowing. Moss hugged the surface. Yet I felt eyes beneath it, waiting. A name whispered on the wind, but I could not catch it. The glow appeared again. I wanted to follow, but it slipped around the stones, elusive. It shaped itself into figures, pale and hollow, vanishing when I tried to focus. Their absence pressed on me, heavier than stone. The air was colder now. Each breath came with a rasp, drawing the scent of damp leaves into my lungs. I shivered. A twig snapped beneath my foot, louder than it should have been. Silence returned, thick and suffocating. I wandered deeper, unsure if I was moving forward or merely in circles. The grave seemed endless, tilting closer, whispering through the rustling leaves. Some names I thought I recognized. Familiar. Forgotten faces pressing through my memory, asking for remembrance. The glow lingered behind a row of ancient stones. I crouched, trying to see what had sparked it. Nothing solid, only the hint of movement, a brush of air, a shadow that didn't belong. Wind rose, carrying the sighs higher. They were stories trapped in the stones, murmurs of regret of unfinished things. I wanted to leave, but something anchored me, a sense that if I turned away, they would reach further into the living. I traced my way back along the narrow paths, leaves scraping my legs. The light didn't follow. It drifted silently, teasing between the crooked stones. I felt its gaze, patient and waiting, as if counting each heartbeat. Finally, I stepped out into the open. The forest edge breathed around me. The night softer here. The glow disappeared. The sighs faded, leaving only the hum of wind over stone. I looked back once. The cemetery lay still, ancient and hungry, a crooked line of shadows stretching beyond what I could see. I could almost hear them remembering my name. The path behind me was gone, swallowed by weeds and darkness. I walked into the quiet, but the memory of sighs lingered, and the feeling that the forgotten were still waiting just beyond the reach of the pale light. The road was quiet. Late autumn wrapped the fields in a pale fog. My tires whispered over damp asphalt. I knew this stretch, or I thought I did. Every turn felt like home, but the trees, they were wrong. A fence I passed a minute ago now arched just ahead. The hedges that should have been low now reached toward the sky, shivering in a cold wind I hadn't felt before. The air tasted damp, like wet leaves pressed against my tongue. I slowed. Each bend drew me closer to somewhere familiar, yet I didn't remember it existing. A mailbox leaned where there had never been one. Its peeling paint smelled faintly of rust and smoke. I blinked. The road twisted beneath the tires. I passed the same oak again, its gnarled roots writhing in shadows that weren't there before. Or maybe they were always there. I couldn't tell. The fog thickened, settling in the hollow of the road. My headlights barely pierced it. A hum floated through the air, soft, unsteady, a voice without words. I remembered turning here, but I hadn't. Every landmark felt like a lie. The curve ahead, I swore I had passed it already. A crow lifted from the branches. Its wings beat the air into a whispering drum. The smell of damp earth rose with it, suffocatingly close. I wanted to open the window, let the cold cut through the fog, but my hands were frozen to the wheel. The road looped again, and again. Every bend was familiar, every shadow familiar, yet nothing felt real. I caught sight of a house, or a ruin. Its windows gaped like dark eyes. I remembered walking past it on a sunny day. The door had been red. Now it was black, silent, watching. I tried to follow the signs. A curve to the left, then another. The lines of the asphalt melted beneath me. The trees whispered, branches scratching a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I thought about stopping. The thought itself sounded hollow. I reached for brakes. The car bayed, or perhaps it didn't. Something shifted in the rearview mirror. A figure, or a shadow, flashed behind me. It was too quick to name, but too close to ignore. The road folded. The sky dimmed beneath the fog. I could smell wet wood, hear distant footsteps over the hum of my engine, each step deliberate. I drove. The lines of the road began to loop in impossible ways. I saw the same broken sign 3 times, its letters dissolving in the mist. It warned nothing. It whispered everything. I slowed. The world outside shivered in muted colors. Shadows clung to the corners of my vision. I touched the steering wheel. It was cold, too cold, and then the road straightened, if only for a heartbeat. I glimpsed a field I knew, stretching in soft moonlight. But the barn at its edge, it was taller, older. Its door hung open like a mouth waiting. I blinked, and the field was gone, replaced by more road, twisting, folding, alive. The tires hummed over asphalt that whispered my name. I could hear it, soft, constant, and I knew this road doesn't end. It never has. It never will. I stopped, or perhaps I never did. The fog pressed close. The hum closer. The shadows listening. And still I turned the wheel. The street was empty. A cold mist clung to the asphalt, curling around the edges of the curb. I could see the street light ahead, its pale glow quivering uncertain. Each flicker carved the road into jagged shadows. One moment, it was long and thin, stretching across the cracked concrete. The next, it stuttered and collapsed into dark pools, leaving me half blind. I felt the air thicken around me. The fog smelled damp, like wet leaves and old iron. I pulled my coat tighter, but it did little to push back the chill crawling up my spine. Something moved in the corner of my eye, a shape, pale and thin, slipping behind a fence post. I blinked and it was gone. Only the streetlight shivering above reminded me it had ever been there. Soft footsteps echoed behind me. I didn't turn. I couldn't. The silence had teeth. A voice whispered my name. It was barely audible, swallowed by the fog. Not human. Not quite. It twisted at the edges, soft and hollow, like wind through a broken pipe. I held my breath. The fog curled tighter around my legs, dampening my senses. Every flicker of light felt deliberate, watching. Every shadow seemed to stretch just beyond my reach. I tried to keep moving. My shoes made no sound on the wet road, but the emptiness carried everything. A door somewhere rattled in the distance. A dog barked once, far off, and died in the mist. The street light sputtered again. Each pulse of light revealed fragments. A fence post, a garbage can, a pale shape crouched low, just at the edge of perception. I forced myself to look straight ahead. The shapes were always gone when I focused. A faint breeze whispered across my skin. It carried a hint of smoke and something else, something rotten hidden beneath the mist. I imagined eyes on me, glinting and unblinking, waiting for the moment I faltered. I stopped. The streetlight hung in the fog like a trembling lantern. It flickered one last time and died. Darkness spread, thick and warm, swallowing the road. And then it was quiet, not the soft quiet like falling snow, but heavy, pressing, patient. I thought I heard breathing behind me. Or maybe it was my own, too loud in the stillness. Every instinct screamed to run, but my feet were rooted. A pale light returned from the streetlight, flickering weakly, uneven. I saw it then, shadows moving closer, but not quite shapes. Shapes made of fog and darkness, gliding along the asphalt. I called my own name softly, almost begging. No answer. Only the whispering wind carried it away. I moved again, slower this time, feeling for the solid edges of the road. The streetlight trembled above me, each flicker stretching the shadows into claws. Every step I took left my chest tight, breath caught between my ribs. Then nothing. The light steadied. The fog thinned just enough to see the road ahead. No shapes, no voices, only the streetlight flickering faintly, watching. I walked past it, heart hammering, and the mist swallowed me again. The shadows followed, always at the edge of sight, always waiting. And I knew, even as the fog eased, that the streetlight would never truly stop flickering. Not for me, not for anyone who walked this road alone. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of wet earth and decaying leaves. Fog curled around the edges of the road, hiding the ditch where the car had been for years. I could see it from the path, half buried in mud, its frame rusted, paint peeled like old skin. The windows were cracked. Tiny fractures ran across the glass, like veins. A pale light hit the shards, catching them just so. I hesitated, breathing slow, feeling the wet grass cling to my boots. There was a hum, soft, steady, almost alive. No wires, no battery. The engine should have been dead, yet it pulsed beneath the hood, quiet and low, like someone holding their breath. I stepped closer. The air smelled of iron rust and something faintly sweet. A shadow moved across the windshield. I froze. The fog thickened, wrapping around me, pressing against my skin. I leaned forward. The cracked glass reflected a face I did not recognize, pale and shivering. But when I blinked, it was gone. Only the hum remained, soft breathing. From inside the car, I could feel it through the glass, shallow, uneven, almost careful. I pressed my hand to the cold metal. The rust pricked my fingers, tiny needles of iron. The breathing stilled the moment I touched it. I stepped back, heart low in my chest, watching the shadows crawl across the interior. Seats sagged, torn. The upholstery smelled of damp, of abandonment, of time itself rotting quietly. A faint click. The driver's door shifted. Not fully open, just moved. I swallowed. The fog seemed to lean in closer, like it wanted me to see, to hear. I circled the car slowly. Every step pressed against the silence. The hum now rose slightly, almost melodic, almost a whisper. I could feel it vibrating through the soles of my shoes, through the damp air. The broken glass reflected something else. Movement behind the seats. A thin shape blurred, fleeting. I blinked. Nothing. Then a soft scratching. Something brushing against the upholstery, quick, careful, patient. I wanted to leave. My feet felt heavy, reluctant. The ditch yawned beneath the car, mud sucking at the edges. But the hum pulled me back, soft insistence. The window creaked. A shadow stretched across the dashboard. Long fingers, pale, not quite human or not quite mine. It recoiled when I looked too long. The engine whispered again, low and steady. I crouched by the side, staring through the cracked glass. The seats were empty. The air inside smelled warmer, closer, like a presence curling in the fog. And then the breathing, closer now, deliberate, measured. I realized it was matching mine. In and out, soft, shallow, alive. The fog drifted over the roof, condensing into droplets that rolled down onto the cracked metal. They tinkled faintly, like tiny chimes, as if the car was listening, waiting. I pressed my ear to glass. The hum seemed to speak in vibration, a low, quiet warning. A shadow flickered across the back seat. I could see it only in the corner of my eye, pale and wavering. I blinked, and the shape vanished, leaving only a small smear on the glass, almost finger-like. I stepped back. Mud squelched under my boots. The air felt colder, thinner. And the hum, it slowed, lowering to a heartbeat. I turned to leave. The fog swallowed the path behind me. Then a single soft footstep. Not on leaves, not on mud. Somewhere closer, inside the air. I didn't look back. I walked faster. The breathing faded, replaced by silence. But when I paused, the hum returned, softer like a whisper in my bones. By the time I reached the edge of the ditch, the car was still there, still rusted, still cracked, still waiting. And I could swear I saw the faint outline of a figure, pressed against the glass, watching. I turned fully. The ditch was empty. No movement, no shadow, only the fog, curling, breathing, waiting for me to step closer again. I walked on, but the hum followed, soft and endless, and somewhere in the cracks of the rusted metal, I could feel it, watching, remembering, breathing. The cabin stood in the fog. A pale light barely reached the timber walls. The door hung open, swaying ever so slightly. I stepped onto the porch. The wood groaned beneath my weight. A cold draft curled around my ankles, carrying the smell of wet earth. Inside, everything was still, empty, yet the air felt thick, like it remembered someone was there before me. My eyes traced the corners. Shadows pulled beneath the rafters. Then a soft thump, almost like footsteps. I froze. The sound didn't come again, but the echo lingered, stretching along the walls. The rocking chair in the corner shivered, back and forth, slow, deliberate. I could almost hear the rhythm of a heartbeat beneath its creak. A whisper drifted through the cabin. Not a voice I knew, not words I could remember. Just something pressing, brushing against the skin at the nape of my neck. I tried to focus on the floorboards. They seemed ordinary. Then one groaned. Or maybe it sighed. It was hard to tell. The air was damp with cold. I could smell the pine from outside, mingle with something metallic, something old. It lingered in the shadows, clinging to the corners where the light could not reach. I moved closer to the chair. The wood was warm, though the room was freezing. The motion had stopped, but I could feel it, the sway. The quiet insistence that it had not been empty. From the ceiling, the rafters creaked. A soft brushing, like fingers against dry wood. I held my breath. Even the silence seemed to breathe along with me. A faint light flickered near the doorway. I didn't turn to look. The shadows were enough. They stretched and shifted, as if the walls themselves had taken a step closer. I thought I heard a sigh, low and wet, then nothing, and then the whisper returned, curling around my ears. I could almost trace it along my spine. It didn't speak. It reminded. I backed toward the door. Every step creaked beneath me. The rocking chair began its slow sway again. One smooth arc. Two. And with each, a pressure built behind my eyes, as though the cabin wanted me to notice something forgotten. The smell of damp earth was stronger near the threshold. It mixed with dust and something old. Leather? Fabric? Something that had been pressed against the wood for decades. I touched the chair. Cold, then warm, then still. And the whisper, it settled low and soft, like it had been waiting, not for me, for something else. Something that knew this hollow space better than I ever could. I stepped back. The door moved slightly in the draft, slamming just enough to echo through the empty walls. I realized the cabin had always been listening, waiting. Outside, the fog pressed closer. The earth felt soft beneath my boots. I glanced back once. The rocking chair was still. The whisper had faded, but the hollow it remained, silent, patient, breathing just beyond the walls. The field waits, endless and still, under the pale wash of moonlight. Tall grass bends in the night wind, though there is no wind I can feel. Each step presses soft into damp earth, muffled by the fog curling at my ankles. I thought I knew this path, but the shapes ahead, they do not belong. Eyes, hundreds of them, blinking slowly, without sound, hiding in the swaying grass. I stop. The fog thickens, clinging to my skin, smelling faintly of damp soil and something older. Each blink makes the hairs on my arms rise. I try to count them. I can't. They shift when I do. Following, always following. A rustling just behind me. I turn. Nothing. Only the field, breathing in silence. I move forward again. The grass parts like hands, leaving glimpses of those pale, staring shapes. My chest tightens. My breath curls in the cold. I hear it then. Soft. A scrape or a whisper. Perhaps both. I think it came from the ground beneath my feet. The eyes do not blink then. They wait. I crouch. My fingers brush against the damp grass. It quivers under my touch, like something alive and aware. Shapes shift. Shadows lengthen. I feel them, watching from every side. The fog presses closer, carrying a faint metallic scent. A step too loud. I freeze. The blinking starts again, slow and deliberate, counting me. I am not alone, though I see no one. I feel their gaze on the back of my neck. I taste the cold in my mouth, metallic and dry. The ground rises slightly here. A mound or a face buried beneath the swaying blades. I cannot look directly, yet I cannot stop. Each movement feels wrong, yet inevitable. The eyes follow when I kneel. They watch when I crawl. Even when I lie flat, pressed into earth, they hover, suspended in fog, unblinking. I sense shapes behind shapes, layers of watching nested and patient. The fog thickens until my hands vanish in the white. I hear my own heartbeat, muffled, but somehow wrong. Closer, farther. I cannot tell. Every blink of the eyes matches the pulse in my ears. I can no longer separate them. A breeze, almost imagined, brushes my hair. The grass ripples. The eyes vanish for a heartbeat, then return, blindingly pale, immovable, watching. I stand. The fog clings to my legs, sticky and cold. The field stretches endlessly, the horizon lost to gray. The eyes blink slower now, almost lazily, as if deciding whether to follow or let me leave. I take a step back. Then another. Footsteps swallowed, rustling swallowed. Silence so thick it presses into my chest. I turn and run. Soft steps, careful not to trip. The eyes vanish as quickly as they appeared, but I feel them in every shadow, in every shiver of grass. Even when the trees begin to edge the field, dark and solid, Their gaze remains. I stumble into the clearing beyond, fog thinning. The field of eyes is behind me, yet I know, as I breathe ragged in the pale light, that eyes do not forget. They only wait. And sometimes when the wind is still, I feel them, watching, always watching. The poles have been here longer than anyone remembers. Their wood has turned gray, splintered by rain and time. The wires sag between them, heavy, tired, like veins that forgot what they carried. I walk this road every evening. It's the only path that leads out of town, though no one really leaves anymore. The air hums low, steady, like something breathing through the dirt. Sometimes, when the wind dies, the hum gets louder. It creeps through my shoes, through my bones. It feels like someone whispering, but from under the ground. Tonight, the sky is pale, almost white. Even the trees seem drained of color. And still, the wires tremble, though nothing moves them. I stop beneath one of the poles. Its base leans slightly, a dark line running down where water once followed. There's a phone box nailed to it, old metal, the paint peeled off like skin. The cord inside is severed. But when I press my ear to it, there's static, not the kind you'd expect from a dead line. This one pulses, breathes, like a heart trying to start again. Then, through the static, a voice, so faint it barely exists. A whisper stretched thin. Can you hear me? My throat tightens. The air around me feels too still. I pull back, but the hum doesn't stop. It follows me down the road, buried in the dirt. Every few steps, another pole, each one humming louder, like they're connected by something more than wire, something alive. I remember my father used to work this line, before it broke, before the town stopped using it. He said voices traveled through here long after the phones were gone. He said they didn't belong to the living. The wind lifts the edge of my coat. I keep walking. The hum turns sharp. A hiss now, like anger buried too long. The next pole creaks as I pass. Then another whisper, closer. Please? It sounds wet, trembling, not mechanical. More like someone shivering through the static. I glance down the row. The poles vanish in the fog. All I can see are the wires, sagging like spider silk across the void. A shape moves at the far end. Too tall, too still. I blink and it's gone. The static grows clearer now, pressing at my temples. I shouldn't listen, but I do. I hold the broken receiver in my hand and breathe into it. There's a pause. Then a breath, not mine. I'm still here. The voice cracks apart, scattering into clicks. But the tone, the way it knows me, freezes my chest. Because it sounds like him. My father. He's been gone 7 years. Buried not far from this road. Near the last pole before the woods begin. I drop the receiver. It swings once, twice, and hangs there. The hum lowers, almost like a sigh. Then everything stops. Silence. No wind. No breath. Just the stillness of a world that's listening back. I take a step, and the gravel shifts beneath my feet. The phone line quivers above me, stretching like it's about to speak again. But instead, something falls from it, a fragment of wire, black, brittle, when it hits the ground. It hums once more, a faint echo. Don't hang up. My heart stumbles. The fog folds around me, pressing close. And I realize the whisper isn't from the phone anymore. It's behind me, soft, pleading, almost human. You never called back. The wires overhead tremble, as if holding their breath. I turn. But there's only the road, the leaning poles, and the pale light fading through the mist. The hum returns, low, patient. It trails me all the way home. And even now, if I press my ear against the wall, I can still hear the line breathing, waiting. It was late, too late for anyone to be there. The fog had swallowed the whole street. Thick, milky, unmoving. Even the lamps along the road looked like faint ghosts, their halos sinking into the mist. I stopped by the rusted gate. A sign hung crookedly from one hinge, its paint peeled and gray. Hillview Playground. Closed since 1998. The metal creaked as I pushed the gate open. It didn't want to move. It groaned like something in pain. The air inside felt colder, heavier, The sand beneath my shoes was damp, clinging, and there they were, the swings. 2 of them, swaying gently back and forth. But the air was still, not a breath of wind, just a faint hum of fog pressing against the world. I stood there watching. The chains whispered with each slow arc, a rhythmic scrape, back and forth, back and forth. I could smell the metal, that sharp, wet scent of rust. It mixed with the sweetness of old wood chips, and something else, something sour, like rainwater that had been trapped too long. I took a step closer, the mist sticking around my ankles, swirling, parting like it knew I was there. The seesaw on the far side moved too, just a little, tilting, then rising again, slowly, carefully. It was the silence that made it worse. Even the crickets had gone quiet. No night breeze, no cars, just a faint squeak of motion, unseen, steady, patient. I thought I heard something else then. Soft, distant, laughter. It came in little bursts, like echoes skipping through fog. High-pitched, thin, broken apart by static. It didn't belong to the night. I froze. Every instinct told me to turn back. But I didn't. I kept walking, past the swings, past a roundabout frozen in half-turn. My hand brushed against the cold metal bars. Slick, sticky. I didn't want to know what it was. The laughter came again. Closer, still distant, but now around me, moving in circles. Each sound cut off as soon as I turned. Like something was breathing between the notes. The fog pulsed. It almost looked alive. I could see faint shapes in it, small, shifting figures, like children running, playing, disappearing the moment I blinked. One swing jerked sharply. The chain rattled, then stilled. The air grew thick, pressing against my chest. I could hear my heartbeat echo through the empty field. A faint hum rose behind me, low, electric. It reminded me of power lines humming after rain. I turned. The seesaw was now balanced perfectly in the middle, and something sat on it, small, shadowed, still. My breath caught. The shape looked like a child, knees drawn up, face hidden behind a curtain of hair. No movement, no sound. Then, slowly, the plank dipped, the other end lowered, as if someone unseen had climbed on. I took a step back. The sand under my shoes whispered softly, shifting with weight that wasn't mine. The laughter returned, louder now, dozens of voices, overlapping, cracked and distant. It filled the fog, pressed against my ears, but still somehow felt far away, like a recording, like a memory trying to play itself through static. The seesaw stopped moving. The swings hung still. Everything fell silent again. I didn't breathe for a long time. When I finally did, the air tasted wrong, cold and stale. I turned back toward the gate, heart racing but steps slow. And as I left, I heard one last sound, faint behind me. A single chain creaking, a soft whisper of metal, and a voice, small, fragile, carried through the mist. Don't go yet. I didn't look back. The laughter faded. The fog swallowed the playground hole. And the night returned to silence. It was autumn. The air was thin enough to taste. Every breath felt borrowed. I'd wandered too far from the cabin, just to clear my head, just to see the woods one more time before the frost came. That's when I saw it. A lantern, hanging between 2 birch trees. Not swinging, not still either, like it was breathing. The light wasn't yellow, not quite. It pulsed in slow waves, a pale green, then white, then nothing, then back again. I thought someone might be out there. A hunter, maybe, but there were no voices, no crunch of boots, only the hum. It started low, like the ground was exhaling. I could feel it through the soles of my shoes. A deep, steady rhythm, alive and waiting. I took a step closer. The leaves shifted. The air pressed cold against my throat. And I realized the trees had gone silent. No wind, no insects, just that faint vibration, like a string pulled tight under the earth. The lantern flickered. Shapes moved just past its glow, thin, tall, bending wrong at the joints. I blinked, and they were gone. I told myself it was a fog, that it was nothing, but my chest felt hollow, like something had stepped inside me and hadn't left. The hum grew stronger. Not loud, but near. So near I could feel it pulse behind my ribs. Every thud of my heart matched it. I should have turned back. But the light, it was warm. Somehow, it pulled me closer like it knew my name. When I stepped into its reach, the soil beneath me rippled. The roots trembled like they were alive. The lantern swayed once, then stopped. There was something inside it, not a flame, but movement, a swirl of pale dust, circling a dark center, like an eye that refused a blink. I reached out, just close enough to feel the warmth on my fingertips. And then the hum stopped, all at once. The night fell open, the fog parted, the air froze, and in that stillness, every tree around me seemed to turn. Their bark cracked softly, like skin drying under heat. From the edges of the forest, those same shapes appeared again, motionless, faceless, waiting. The lanterns glowed dimmed. A thin voice whispered between the branches. Not words, just breath. But I knew it meant for me to leave. I stumbled back. The ground was soft, too soft, like something beneath was breathing still. When I looked over my shoulder, the path was gone. Only fog, only that hum returning from deep below. I ran until my lungs burned, until the night bled into gray, until the trees grew thin again and the world felt real. When I finally looked back, the forest was quiet, still, empty, but far between the trunks, that lantern still hung. Its light faint, its pulse slow, waiting. And sometimes when the wind dies and the earth holds its breath, I still feel that same hum under my feet, alive, and listening. The road split before me, but I don't remember turning. The fog had been thin just moments ago, stretched like gauze across the fields. Now it was heavy, swollen, breathing against the glass of my windshield. Every few seconds, the headlights caught something, trees maybe, or the suggestion of them, and then nothing. The world fell into a quiet that didn't feel natural, like the air itself had stopped waiting for me to move. The sign at the intersection leaned crooked, its paint eaten away by years of rain. No names, no arrows, just a cross of rusted metal standing against a pale white blur. I sat there, idling, my hands resting on the steering wheel, listening. There was a hum, faint, low, beneath the noise of the engine. It pulsed through the seat, through my chest, almost like it was coming from below the road. The fog pressed harder against the windshield, smearing the faint light into milky halos. Every breath fogged the glass again. And again, I tried to remember the last town I'd passed, the last turn, the last name I'd read. But there was nothing, just the endless road that had curved and curved until I was here, at the crossroads. The longer I sat, the clearer the feeling grew, that something was waiting for me to decide. Left, right, straight, each direction swallowed by the fog. No sign of distance or light ahead, just pale gray, and something faintly darker shifting deep inside it. The hum grew louder. Not a machine, not wind. It felt closer to breathing. I turned off the engine. The silence that followed was thick, complete, until I realized it wasn't silence at all. There was still something, a rhythm, slow, wet, almost like footsteps on gravel. I opened the door. The fog curled around me, damp and cold, brushing against my arms like hands. The air tasted metallic, sharp and old, like rainwater from a rusted pipe. The road beneath my feet was soft, as if the asphalt had loosened. At the center of the intersection, something faint glimmered, a shape traced into the road itself. A circle. No, more like a mark burned into the tar. Cross lines, looping back on themselves. It looked new. The hum came from there. I could feel it through my shoes, through the soles of my feet. It moved in waves, gentle, then stronger, drawing me closer. I didn't want to step inside it, but my body didn't wait for me to decide. The moment I crossed the faint edge of that blackened circle, the fog around me changed. It tightened. The air grew warmer, like breath against the back of my neck. And the hum stopped. I blinked, tried to adjust. The light was dimmer here. No stars, no reflection, only the faint white of the mist. But the road was gone. No car, no signpost, just the crossroads, stretching endlessly in every direction. The silence was unbearable. I spoke just to hear something. "Hello." The word barely left my mouth before it came back. Whispered, but wrong. My own voice, a half-second too late. Quieter, almost curious. I turned around. Through the fog, something moved. A figure. Standing where I had been a moment ago. Still, its shape matched mine. Every tilt of the head, every breath. The whisper came again. "Left or right?" The words shivered through the air. The same tone as mine, but hollow, stretched. I stepped back, my heel brushing the mark again. The hum returned, softer now, like a pulse beneath the ground. The figure tilted its head, mirroring me, but when I moved left, it didn't follow. It waited, then it raised a hand, slowly, and pointed, not toward me, not toward the fog, but straight down to the very center of the crossroads. I could see now, something buried beneath the thin layer of gravel, a darker patch, slightly sunken, like the earth had been disturbed. A faint smell began to rise, damp soil mixed with something older, sweet metallic, decay. I crouched without meaning to. The hum grew sharper, vibrating through my teeth, through the air between breaths. When I reached toward the ground, my fingers brushed the surface, and it was warm, as if something underneath was breathing. The figure behind me whispered again, this time closer. "Choose." I looked up. The fog had folded in around us, closing the distance until I could see nothing but its outline. Its face was blank, or maybe hidden, but I could feel its eyes. I stood, took a step back, and the hum began to fade. The fog loosened, slowly peeling away like it had never been there. And then, just as suddenly, I was standing by my car again, engine still running, headlights cutting through the white. The sign leaned in the same crooked way, but the mark on the road was gone. I looked down at my hands. The tips of my fingers were gray, dusted with something that looked like ash. When I brushed it away, the smell of earth clung to me. The road ahead was clear now, open, waiting. But no matter which way I turned the wheel, the needle on the compass kept spinning. And somewhere behind me, just beneath the engine's hum, I swear I heard it whisper once more, "Choose." It was late autumn. The air had that still, heavy quiet before the frost. The fields behind my house were empty, stripped bare and dull. Only the old fence remained. It ran along the back edge of the property, half sunk into the ground, its boards swollen and gray from years of rain. When the wind passed through the gaps, it made a soft, low hum. At first, I thought it was the wind, but it wasn't. The humming had a rhythm, too steady, too alive. I remember walking out there one evening, coat half buttoned, breath hanging pale in the air. The grass crackled beneath my boots, brittle, tired, and that hum was waiting for me. It trembled through the wood like a quiet pulse. When I touched it, the vibration ran into my fingertips like the fence was breathing through the boards. I pulled my hand back, and it stopped, just silence, the kind that presses against your ears until you can hear your own heartbeat. I stepped closer again, and the hum returned, a low, drawn-out tone that sank into the soil, soft enough to make my teeth ache. There were shadows between the slats, thin shapes shifting where the moonlight broke through. They didn't move with the wind. They moved with me. When I leaned in, they leaned back, a pale flicker across the wood. I thought it was reflection until it blinked. I stumbled back, the hum deepening like a voice clearing its throat. And somewhere behind me, a whisper. It came from the direction of the house, then from the trees, then right beside my ear, just a single word, drawn out, quiet. My name. I froze, didn't turn, didn't breathe. The fence vibrated harder now, rattling softly against its nails. I could feel it through my boots, through the ground itself. It was as if something beneath the dirt was pulling the sound upward, struggling to speak. I wanted to run, but my hand lifted again, drawn back to the rough, splintered surface. The moment my fingers brushed it, the hum stopped. And in that stillness, I heard breathing. Not mine. Slow, uneven, right on the other side of the fence. I leaned closer. The wood cool against my cheek. There was a faint warmth pressing back from the other side, like someone standing there, mirroring me. Hello? The word barely left my lips. It echoed inside the hum, swallowed by it. Then came the rustling. Dry grass. Shifting weight. Something moving from one post to the next. Following me. I stepped sideways. It followed. The shadows slipped between the boards. Thin hands of darkness stretching through the gaps. Curling. Then retreating as if the light burned them. I backed away until my heel caught on a root. The hum deepened, vibrating low enough that I could feel it in my chest. And then silence again. The kind that leaves your ears ringing. The kind that waits for you to make the next sound. When I finally looked up, the shadows were gone. The fence stood still, cold and dead. I turned to go, but the hum started again. Faint, deliberate, following me down the path. By the time I reached my porch, it was louder, steady, constant. That night, I left the lights on. I could still feel the vibration in my hands, even after washing them raw. And every night since, the fence hums, sometimes softly, like it's dreaming, sometimes sharp, as if it remembers my name. I've stopped touching it, but I still hear it, through the walls, through the floor, through the silence just before sleep. And when I wake in the dark, I swear the hum is coming from inside the house now. The air in the barn felt heavy. Late autumn, everything outside was still, the kind of stillness that presses against your ears. The wooden ladder groaned beneath my hands as I climbed. Each rung felt softer than the last, like it had been soaked in something. I could smell the hay, damp and sweet, mixed with a faint bite of rust. When I reached the loft, the air changed. Cooler, thinner, dust hung there, caught in pale light from the cracks in the roof. But it wasn't falling. It drifted sideways, like breath moving against it. The boards creaked when I stepped forward. Slow, tired creaks that seemed to echo back from somewhere deeper. I looked around. Piles of hay, old tools, a broken window, letting in a strip of gray. Then I saw the shapes. They stretched across the walls, long and trembling. At first I thought they were my own shadows, but they didn't match my movement. They swayed, even when I stood still, bending with a rhythm, too slow to belong to wind. A hum began to rise. Low, like something alive beneath the floor. It wasn't from any machine. It had that wet, throat-deep tone, half voice, half vibration. I could feel it through my shoes, through my ribs. I whispered into the emptiness, just to hear a normal sound, but my voice came back wrong. Flat, delayed, as if something was speaking with me 1 second later. The dust twisted again. Small motes dancing in spirals, not random, but pulling toward one corner, the darker corner near the back wall, where the boards bowed inward. My eyes strained to adjust. There was nothing there, only the faint shimmer of air, like heat above asphalt. But it pulsed, in and out, like something breathing behind the wood. Then came the footsteps, soft, uneven, hay shifting beneath invisible weight. They stopped when I turned. Started again when I took a step. I counted them. 3 behind me. Pause. 2 more when I moved forward. Always just 1 step behind. I wanted to call out again, but the hum grew louder, swallowing the words in my throat. It didn't echo anymore. It filled the space, pressing against my ears until my eyes watered. The shadows on the wall began to stretch higher, bending toward the ceiling. Long, finger-like shapes tracing the beams. One of them twitched. I froze. The hum broke. A single breath, not mine, moved past my cheek. Warm, slow. I turned toward it, and the dust parted, revealing the faint shape of something standing there. Not solid, not air either, just a hollow outline, flickering like candle smoke. It leaned forward, and the footsteps stopped. For a moment, everything was still again. The hum sank back into silence. The dust fell straight down this time. Normal, almost peaceful. I exhaled, shaking, gripping the edge of a beam. The barn sighed with me. Then a soft creak from above. The ceiling boards. A second loft I hadn't noticed. I looked up. There were small holes in the planks, slivers of darkness peering through. Something moved behind them, Not dust, not shadow, just eyes, pale, unfocused, drifting side to side like they were searching for something. I took one step back. The floor moaned. A dry whisper escaped the ceiling, like with exhaling after years of holding its breath. Then it stopped. Everything stopped. The hum, the air, even the dust hung frozen mid-fall. I backed toward the ladder, never taking my eyes off that ceiling. And right before I climbed down, I saw it. A single handprint pressed into the hay beside me. Fresh, perfectly formed, but hollow in the center, as if whatever made it wasn't there anymore. Outside, the wind picked up. It carried the same low hum from the loft above. Soft, constant, following me long after I left the barn. It was late when I saw it. A single stone, half buried beside the road. The headlights brushed against it for only a second, but long enough to make me stop. The highway was empty. No cars. No sound except the low hum of the engine cooling down. And the wind crawling through the grass. The grave was small. No name I could read. The letters had been carved by hand, shallow and uneven. Someone cared once, but not for long. I stepped closer. The dirt was uneven, soft under my boots. A plastic bouquet lay faded beside the mound, its colors drained into the soil. Then light. It wasn't my car. It wasn't the moon. It came from the grave itself. Pale, trembling, like fireflies that had forgotten how to fly. They hovered inches above the ground, flickering in and out as if caught between breaths. I felt the air thicken, the kind of stillness that presses against your chest. Every sound folded in on itself. Even the crickets stopped. I should have left, but I didn't. The lights pulsed, one by one, like they were breathing. And in the wind, something whispered. A cry, small, thin, almost human. I turned my head, but the sound followed me. It wasn't coming from behind or ahead. It was coming from below. The dirt shifted, just slightly, like someone turning over in their sleep. My mouth went dry. The smell of wet earth filled my nose, cold and heavy, mixed with something older, something that didn't belong to the air. The lights drifted higher, 3 of them now, moving together, slow and uncertain, like they were looking for someone. I stepped back, and they followed. Every breath came shallow. I could hear the wind inside my ears, a low whistle through the grass, and then a shape move at the edge of the trees. It wasn't tall, just dark, still. Its outline swayed with the branches, but the branches weren't moving. I blinked once, and it was closer. I could see the road behind it, cutting through the night like a silver vein. But the shape had no face, no edges, only the faint shimmer of those lights dancing across what might have been eyes. The air went colder. My breath hung in front of me, turning pale. The crying grew softer, as if whoever made it had turned their head toward me. My fingers shook. The dirt under my boots began to sink, just a little, like something underneath was shifting again. I stepped back onto the asphalt. The lights dimmed. The shape leaned forward, as though it wanted to follow, but couldn't cross the road. I don't know how long I stood there, watching, listening. The silence was too perfect. Even the trees seemed to hold their breath. Then, one by one, the lights went out. First the one on the left, then the one in the center, then the smallest one, which flickered twice and faded like an exhale. The grave was dark again. The air lightened. The wind moved freely through grass. I backed away, not turning my back until I reached the car. The headlights washed over the mound one last time, and for a moment, I thought I saw someone kneeling there, pale hands in the dirt, head bowed, still as stone. But when I blinked, the road was empty again. I drove until the dawn rose behind the hills. The sky turned gray, and the world felt real again. Still, sometimes when the wind brushes against my window, I hear it, that faint cry, calling from the roadside, just beyond the light. The wind had stopped hours ago, but the blades still moved. Not enough to turn, not enough to make sense, just a slow, tired sway that groaned through the night air. Each creak felt older than the earth beneath it. I stood at the edge of the field, the grass wet around my shoes. It smelled like rain that never came, like rust and dust mixing together. The sky was pale, not dark, not light, just a dim wash of color where the horizon used to be. And the windmill waited there, tilted against it, as if the weight of time had bent its spine. When I stepped closer, the wooden board sighed under me. The air thickened, heavy with the quiet hum of something unseen. It wasn't wind. It wasn't insects. It was lower, slower, a mechanical breath trapped inside the walls. The door hung crooked. A single hinge groaned as I touched it. My hand came away cold, like it had pressed against old skin. Inside, everything was motionless. The gears were still coated in grease, black and sticky, though the metal teeth hadn't moved in years. Spiderwebs shimmered in the faint light, leaking through the boards. Dust floated in long, trembling lines. And beneath all that silence, a hum, a steady vibration, too deep to be heard, but strong enough to feel in my ribs. Something whispered inside it. Not words. Not really. Just a shape of breathing that almost made sense. I leaned closer. The hum rose, as if it knew I was listening. Then a flicker at the doorway. A pale figure. Thin, almost see-through, framed by the gray morning. It didn't move. Didn't breathe. I blinked. It was gone. Only the blades moaned again. Slower now, heavier, like they were sinking into the air. The hum faltered for a heartbeat. Everything stopped. Then a clatter echoed above me, something shifting near the rafters. A rope swayed gently, brushing against the beam. It made a soft, dragging rhythm, like someone breathing through teeth. I stepped back. The floorboards whined. My pulse matched the groaning of the wood, slow and uneven. The whisper returned, closer this time, right behind the walls. It was a voice, or maybe several, layered inside the hum. They didn't speak. They breathed words, each one heavy with something that felt like remembering. I turned toward the open hatch at the back, the one that led down to the pit where the old grinding stone used to spin. The air from below was colder, sharper. It smelled like metal and rain. Something was moving down there. A faint rhythm, wet and deliberate, like footsteps pressed into mud. I crouched, feeling the chill rise up my spine. The hum grew stronger, pulsing to the floorboards, through my fingers. It began to shape itself again, into fragments, into syllables. Not quite my name, but close. A flash of white drifted through the corner of my eye. The figure again, at the bottom of the pit this time, standing beneath the gears, its face tilted upward, pale and blurred, like water over glass. It opened its mouth. No sound came, only the hum, only that terrible, aching vibration that filled every space between breath. The blades outside started turning. Slow, impossible turns against the still air. Dust lifted from the floor. Chains rattled softly. I stumbled backward toward the door, but the hum followed me, pressing closer, louder, until it became part of my heartbeat. Every step I took, it moved with me. Every breath, it answered. Outside, the windmill stood against the sky again, perfectly still. The blades hung motionless. The hum was gone, but the air around me still trembled. I could feel it, faint alive, in the ground beneath my feet, in the rhythm of the silence that followed. And when I looked back one last time, the doorway wasn't empty anymore. Something stood there, pale, waiting, just before the blades began to move again. It was late autumn, the kind of cold that seeps through your sleeves and settles into your bones. The barn sat at the far edge of the field, the part no one went near anymore, grass that didn't grow right. And every night, the fog stayed longer than it should have. The first thing I noticed was the door, tall, heavy, layered with years of dust and rain stains. Its padlock hung crooked, rusted, but strong. When the wind brushed past it, it didn't rattle, it hummed, a low vibration through the wood. Barely there, but enough to feel in my chest, like something asleep, or breathing. I told myself it was just the wind, just the fog, shifting through the cracks. But when I stepped closer, it changed. The hum broke into slow, steady exhales. In, out, faint and damp, like breath against cold glass. The air near the barn was thicker. My throat felt tight. Every sound, my boots, my heartbeat, came back softer, as if the fog was swallowing them whole. The door didn't move, but the wood pulsed. I swear it did. I placed my hand against it. The surface was warm, too warm for the season. Under my palm, something shifted, a slow roll, like muscles turning beneath skin. Then stillness. A faint metallic creak came from inside, chains dragging against wood, not in rhythm, not random either. I stepped back. The humming stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than sound. Behind the fog, the barn's outline blurred. For a moment, it looked wider, taller, like the air itself was breathing in time with whatever was trapped inside. I looked for tracks. There were none. The mud was untouched, perfect. Even the frost on the door hadn't been disturbed. Only the padlock seemed newer, as if someone had replaced it not long ago. I wanted to leave, but something in me, curiosity or fear pretending to be courage, made me stay. I leaned closer, pressed my ear to the seam between the planks. It was quiet, too quiet. Then a whisper, not words, not exactly. A dry inhale, like lungs that hadn't tasted air in years. It brushed the inside of my ear. Soft, slow, waiting. I stumbled back. The fog rolled in harder now, curling around the barn's corners, pressing itself against the door like fingers under fabric. The padlock trembled once, then went still. There was a smell, iron and damp straw, but underneath, something faintly sweet. Rot mixed with something floral, lilacs, maybe, faded like memory. I couldn't tell if it was coming from the ground or from behind the door. I tried to see through the cracks. All I could make out was dark. But deep in that dark, something shifted, a slow scrape, dragging across the floorboards. 1, 2, then silence again. The air around me buzzed. Static, faint and trembling. The same hum that had started it all. It pressed against my teeth, my eyes. The fog pulsed once more. And in that heartbeat, the barn exhaled. A soft gust brushed past my face. Warm, damp, alive. Then nothing. No movement. No sound. Only the padlock swinging gently, tapping against the door. Once. Twice. Like a slow heartbeat fading away. I backed away until the field opened up again, until I could see the house lights through the mist. When I turned for one last look, the barn was still there, quiet, still locked, but the fog around it wasn't moving anymore. It just hung there, pressed tight against the wood, like it was listening. And deep beneath it all, I could still hear it. That low hum, faint, patient, breathing. It was foggy again tonight, the kind of fog that eats the road and leaves only silence behind. The bus stop stood alone by the hill, a glass shelter with peeling paint. Its bench wet from the mist. No bus had passed for hours, maybe longer. The sign above it leaned forward, letters half faded, numbers lost under rust. Only the shape of the route remained, just enough to remember that something used to come here. The streetlights hummed, a pale circle light around my feet. Then nothing. The world beyond was just gray and moving. I could hear the fog breathe, slow, thick, almost like water over gravel. Somewhere behind me, a single footstep, soft, careful. I turned, but there was nothing, only the fog folding into itself. I told myself it was a gravel shifting, that things sound different in mist. But the next step came closer, then stopped. My throat went dry. I stared into the white, waiting for movement, for shape, for anything that belonged to that sound. Nothing moved. No birds, no wind. Even the hum of the lights dimmed. Then I heard it, a whisper, so faint, I almost thought it came from inside my head. It said my name. Not a question, not a call, just my name, soft, drawn out, as if the fog itself remembered how to speak. My breath hit the glass wall behind me. The bus stop was so small, I could feel every vibration in it. The roof ticked with dew, and for a moment, I thought someone was sitting beside me. But when I turned, the seat was empty. Only my reflection stared back, blurred by fog and flickering light. Another whisper, closer, right next to my ear now. It said the same thing. My name, then silence. I tried to step away, but my foot barely lifted. The ground felt heavy, like the air had weight. I looked down. The wet gravel shimmered, and faint shapes pressed into it. Footprints. They led toward me, then stopped right where I was standing. I backed up. The prints didn't move. No others appeared. The fog shifted again, curling, pulling back from the road. For a second, I saw it, the outline of a bus. Old. Still, headlights dim like dying eyes. Its doors were open. No driver. No passengers. Just rows of empty seats, and the faint glow of something inside. I took a step forward. Then another. The gravel crunched once. Then went silent again. The whisper came back, but softer, almost kind this time, like it wanted me to sit down. The bus door hissed. I froze. The lights inside flickered once, twice, then went out. When the fog rolled in again, the shape was gone. Only the empty stop remained. The prints already filling with mist. I waited. Minutes, maybe hours. But the road never appeared. The light never changed. Only that quiet hum. Steady, low, like something beneath the world was breathing. I thought about walking home, but there was no direction anymore. The fog had swallowed everything. So I sat down on the bench, my hands cold against the glass. And when the whisper came again, closer than breath, I didn't answer. I just listened until the silence felt almost human. The road began where the last light ended. A long, gray strip sinking in the fog that swallowed everything ahead. The trees leaned inward, their branches touching like hands in prayer. Every few steps they whispered, not in words, but in the soft drag of leaves brushing against one another. It almost sounded like breathing. I kept walking. My shoes were wet. The gravel clung to them, grinding with every step. Somewhere behind me, the fog shifted, and for a moment, I thought I heard another pair of footsteps. But when I stopped, everything stopped. Only the hum remained. That low, endless hum that came from nowhere and everywhere at once, like the road itself was alive. I tried to look back. There was nothing, just gray. The air tasted cold metallic, like rain before it falls. The trees had no color anymore, just outlines, pale and soft, trembling slightly as if they were breathing too. I don't know when I started hearing the whispers. Maybe they were always there, faint, layered beneath the wind. They didn't say much, just fragments. A name, sometimes mine, sometimes not. I remember thinking, maybe this road led somewhere familiar, but the longer I walked, the more it felt like it was folding in on itself. Every bend looked the same. Every tree leaned the same way. At some point, the fog thickened. It pressed against my face like cloth. And when I reached out, I could feel moisture trembling in the air, clinging to my skin like breath. I stopped again. Up ahead, something moved. Not walking, just there, a pale shape, still as stone, standing in the middle of the road. My chest felt tight. I blinked, and the figure leaned slightly, as though the fog itself had taken shape, and was curious to see who I was. When I stepped forward, it stepped back, each movement silent, mirroring mine perfectly. The whispers grew clearer. Not words, just rhythm, soft, repetitive, like someone tried to remember a prayer they'd long forgotten. I tried calling out, but my voice barely rose above a whisper. The fog ate it whole. It felt wrong to make noise here. The air didn't want it. So I walked again. The road narrowed. The trees leaned closer, their trunks black with moisture, bark flaking like old paint. When I brushed against one, the texture stayed on my fingertips, cold, wet, and faintly sticky. The hum deepened. I could feel it now, under my feet, like a pulse. And I realized maybe I wasn't walking on the road anymore. Maybe I was walking through something. Every step grew heavier, the air thicker. The whispers rose, overlapping. Hundreds of voices, maybe thousands, all whispering in time of my heartbeat. I wanted to stop, to rest, but the thought of standing still felt worse, because whatever was behind me, it was waiting for me to do exactly that. I don't know how long I walked. Minutes, hours. The fog made time bleed away. Sometimes I thought I saw lights, small flickers deep between the trees, like lanterns being carried in silence. They never moved closer, only watched. The road began to tilt upward, Barely at first, then steeper. My legs ached. My breath came out in little clouds that vanished too quickly. And then I saw it. At the top of the rise, an archway made of twisted branches. It looked ancient, heavy with moss and dripping water. Beneath it, the fog churned like smoke. Something told me this was the end, but I wasn't sure what that meant. An end to the road. Or, to me, the whispers had softened now. Not warning, not pleading, just calm. I took a few more steps, and the ground changed beneath me. From gravel to something smoother, colder. The hum fell silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. In that stillness, I realized something simple. The road had never been meant to take me anywhere. It was waiting for me to understand that. The fog moved around me, slow and gentle, curling like hands around my shoulders. There was no fear anymore. No sound, no shape, just a faint pulse of the world breathing in time with mine. And for the first time, I felt weightless, as though I'd finally stepped out of a place where I'd been walking all my life. I looked back one last time, but the road was gone. The trees were gone. Everything gone. Only the fog remained, pale, endless, still. I could still hear something in it, though a whisper that wasn't quite a voice. It said nothing. And somehow I understood everything. The road doesn't end. It only grows quieter until you stop walking.